welcome to the Jeremy Mullins podcast, where I'm Jeremy, your host. I'm here today with Mr. Monte Kaufman,
The official co-host.
the official co-host. I don't know. Reno is officially back home, out of his school, so maybe we'll get to see his beautiful face on the podcast here soon.
I was thinking about it. We've never done one with like all three of us on the call.
I don't think so.
No, we haven't.
No, but we'll have to make it happen.
For
You make
sure.
an in-person one happen. That would be pretty cool.
I was also thinking about that because I was looking through some of the Instagram, the JM podcast Instagram page, and like back to you had the studio, you got fancy for a while, had the nice little lights in the background, like you
Yeah,
were just like
we still have that in Kentucky. That's his main studio for his production company. So it's still there.
right.
It's just a process of finding the time to get there, right? You know,
No, I need to do it. I'm only 45 minutes away.
yeah. Well, listen, I'm only 11, right?
Hours.
Well, hours, not minutes away. So we will make it happen. But speaking of going back and looking at the podcast, one of the things I've wanted to do now that we're on season 3 is kind of go back to the beginning and redo some of the beginning podcasts, right? And reason being is, one, not that they're old material; it's definitely not outdated in 3 years. But we may use different analogies. There may be some updates. There may be some things that you and I have changed in our coaching platform. And I think it's a good way to refresh it. And today, that's what we're going to do. But it comes with a little bit of a twist. And man, I'll have to figure out if we can share this. I hate to share it because it has a business's name on it because the individual tagged the business. And this company is a great company. They have nothing wrong with the people there or anything like that. But it just goes to show you that expectations are a little bit different. And I see the numbers and I'm just like I cringe almost, with what's going on with that. But with that being said, losing muscle should not happen when we're in a diet phase. And I think what it is it's just outside of wellness, if we're just talking fat loss, right? And we can talk about fat loss clinics. You get to be talking about GLP-1 clinics. I'm not saying all of them. I'm not lumping every single clinic into one category here, but you can drop body fat and maintain your muscle tissue when you're in a reduced caloric diet. You know, if you got 100 pounds to lose and you drop a couple pounds of muscle, oh, sure, that's okay. We could give up a couple pounds of muscle to lose 100 pounds of body fat, but you shouldn't be losing a tremendous amount of body fat while you're losing weight. And that's kind of what the stimulation of going over today's podcast. And we're going to talk about the screenshot, this data, and then we're going to get into reviewing the ISSN, so the International Sports and Nutrition Society's new position paper. There we go. Or position stand on protein. Hopefully I got that right.
Yeah, you got it right.
Got it right. So I think this was episode 13.
13, yeah, deep dive into protein.
Yeah. And it'll probably be a little bit better because I think I did that one solo with more of like a lecture. But you guys can definitely go back and listen to it or listen to this one because we're going to go over the same information on these 13 bullet points that come from that position paper. But we also want to set the tone of why it's so important, right? So let's just speak there on some education points, Monte. Why is it important to maintain muscle tissue when we're on our wellness journey, specifically speaking to fat loss, right? So we're kind of, if you are a coach, you're thinking fat loss clients here. If you're in a position that you want to drop body fat, this is a great podcast for you. Okay. So we are speaking more to the clientele that needs to drop body fat on the podcast today and why protein is so important.
I mean, there's a lot of different things that we can touch on here. I would say one of the biggest ones, and the reason it's important is because I don't know if like an exact percentage, you might know it, or a number of like the people who regain weight after losing weight. And I would love to know the data on how many of those people lost a lot of muscle tissue. Because I would say, maintaining muscle tissue during the fat loss phase is going to be like one of the number one ways to, keep a metabolism in a good spot so we can maintain those results when we get down, when we lose the weight.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's a high percentage of people gain weight back. That's the reality. Whether we're looking at individuals that have bariatric surgery, whether you're looking at individuals who use GLP-1 meds, if we don't change the lifestyle and maintain those habits, individuals gain their weight back. And you and I see this. We went through this ourselves. Rarely does someone drop, 60, 70 pounds and then maintain that forever, right?
Right.
What we generally will see is individuals will drop some weight, they'll gain a little bit back, they'll drop the weight again, gain a little bit back, and then it's like you find a groove where then it's just a fluctuation of 3 to 10 pounds, depending on how big someone is. That is more of a common trend of what we see in fat loss journeys versus, once again, someone dropping the weight and not having any issues out of it.
Yeah. And then, I mean, there's that. And then the second point I would go to, and this might be a lot of people's first, is maintaining the muscle tissue is going to determine what you look like when you lose the weight. So, I mean, I've worked with people and I've personally done it myself to where it's like, didn't prioritize, maintaining muscle tissue through resistance training, through protein, and then lost a good amount of weight, but didn't really like the way they looked. And I'm not, there's a term that everybody uses, and I'm going to say it because this is what everybody knows, is skinny fat, right? They lose a
Yeah.
lot of weight, but then they kind of don't really change their body composition and the way they look. They almost end up looking the same with just a lower number on the scale.
Yeah. And you say this in very good point about most people are going to gain their weight back. And if you lose, 10 pounds of muscle and 30 pounds of body fat, okay, you're down 40 pounds. But when you gain 40 and 50 pounds back, you don't gain the muscle tissue back
No,
because you have not established any habits that are going to help gain that muscle tissue. So what you have is, yes, you've got a skinny fat, but then when the person gains the weight back and now they're on the scale at a higher number, they're actually a higher body fat percentage than when they first started their journey. And that's
correct.
why,
It was worse.
right. And that's why it's so important and why we're so big on protein. We've been big on protein, for myself for a decade and a half now. This is not, because the food got a pyramid change. This is not because, social media is a bigger trend and everybody's, getting on, what is it? I laugh at the one that says, got more peer pressure to eat protein now in my 30s and 40s than I did to do drugs or drink when I was in my 20s or something like that.
Yeah, I saw
You
that the
know,
other day.
yeah, like what I get it. Like it's a hot topic, but there's a reason that you should optimize your protein intake inside of your journey when we're talking about dropping body fat. Okay, first and foremost, you mentioned it. We want to look good. For lack of better terms, you want to look good with your clothes off, right? We all do. And yes, I got it. There's other goals. Maybe as we age, we're a little bit different. It's not the main goal, but along the way, everybody in this world at a certain point, maybe their goal inside of a wellness journey was to look better, period. Right. And the more muscle tissue you have, the less body fat you have, of course, the leaner look you're going to have. And it's the look that most people want and like. Okay. But also, you mentioned it, maintaining the muscle tissue maintains your resting metabolic rate. So, the more the more muscle tissue that we have in our body, the more calories we burn on any given day. And that's where, once again, these crash diets where we don't do the correct things is going to drop a lot of weight on the scale, but set you up for failure later on. And once again, it's expected almost, and that's it. It really appalls me that this post was made and it was not addressed, and they were excited about it. Okay, and this was like a DEXA scanning place, so you got clinics, you got some private businesses now. You got a lot of hospital settings that will maybe have a DEXA scan machine, and a DEXA scan machine is dual X-ray observer. I can't remember all the clinical term on it, but it's basically an X-ray machine that will do a X-ray of your body and give you your T score for bone density, so we can know what your bone density looks like. And that's what it was originally developed for. And then also a printout, of course, of how much body fat you have. And what's cool about it, it's an X-ray. So I feel like with DEXA scans, it is one of the most correct or accurate measurement to measurement, if that makes sense. Versus some of the other body fat tests, in-body scales, which is bioimpedance, even skin caliper, because who's doing the skin caliper, are they experienced enough? They have a little bit higher standard deviation. Now, all of them can be good because you're watching the trend anyway, but that's a different topic for a different day. Okay. So this was a DEXA, machine, and it was progress. It was probably posted, from April last year to now, so roughly 8 to 10 months. And this individual lost 47 pounds, which is awesome, right? If we just had it on paper, 47-pound loss, great. 220 pounds down to 173. Sounds good so far, right? You have anything against that?
No,
Yeah. I mean, somebody drops 220 down to 173. I'm happy. Okay.
let's go.
Let's go. Body fat percent loss, 5.8%. Once again, pretty good loss. But in my mind, I think about this as someone, we don't have height, weight, we don't have anything else here, but 220 pounds, if I took an average person off the street at 220 pounds, I would say they're close to 30% body fat, right? Like that's just a rough estimate. Okay.
Yeah.
And 6% drop from that, if we're 30% body fat, we're still 24% body fat. For a female, that's starting to get in the healthy range, but for a guy, that's still carrying a lot of percent body fat. That's the reality. Okay, so that was my first look when I saw this. I'm like, that should be higher. When someone drops almost 50 pounds, that should be almost like a 10%, 15% drop of body fat percentage. Okay, fat mass lost 32 pounds. Once again, by itself, sounds great. Monte, if I asked you, hey, you want to drop 32 pounds in 10 months, would you be happy with that?
Right now?
You don't have it to lose right now, but in general, yes.
No, 100%. Yeah. Yeah. If I'm saying
I saw the
the
wheels turning.
the place we just talked about, yes, I would want to lose the 32 pounds.
Yeah, you were doing the math. Like, do I have
Like,
32?
how
You
much?
were doing it. Not right now. Hypothetical, yes. Um, and then this is the next one that was there and just kind of like, man, no one addressed this. Lean mass lost 15 pounds. That is big. That is big, especially for let's just say this is a 40-year-old, 50-year-old. You odds of them gaining that 15 pounds of muscle back is low. Not going to happen unless they work super, super hard and do all the right things to gain that muscle tissue back. And, just kind of like, oh man, like that blows my mind. Right. And then we dig a little bit further. Visceral fat dropped from 2 pounds down to a pound, which is good, because that's, the fat that's really kind of on the inside. Okay. That's good. Like that, there's a drop there. Their bone density score, went up, which is good. Okay. So that means they probably started doing some type of movement to have bone density go up. But then at the bottom, this is what you mentioned earlier, their body score. And once again, I don't know the exact calculations that go into the DEXA fits to give the body scores, right? But hey, we're all intelligent enough to be like, A plus is good. Okay.
Yeah. Great.
They went from a C to a C plus. And I'm like, that's what you were talking about. How you look at the end of your journey is going to be dictated gaining muscle tissue. If they would have maintained that 15 pounds of muscle and dropped only 32 pounds of body fat, right? Body fat stayed the same and muscle stayed the same. Yes, the loss on the scale would be a little bit less. They wouldn't be 173 pounds. They'd be 15 pounds heavier. So they would actually be 188. But their body score, I bet you, would be a B plus or even an A. And the percent body fat that they had lost would be close to 10%.
I would
And
love to just cut the podcast there and take that segment and send it to everyone who stresses out about the scale when we are having them resistance training hit the protein. That alone right there just sums it up perfectly.
And once again, I am not going after this place at all. I love the DEXA scan as a tool. And what's been cool about it, and I'm sure you've seen this when your people go have a DEXA scan done, the people who scan it, like just the workers at the thing, they are always excited and being like, how did you maintain muscle tissue? How did you gain a pound of muscle when you drop 40 pounds of body fat? Or, hey, your muscle tissue, you have a lot of muscle tissue and you've lost 100 pounds. We don't usually see that, right? So that's a compliment on our individuals that go have these scans done when these individuals at these places are making the comments. And once again, I understand they are trained there to just talk about what this machine does. I don't know if these places have dietitians, have trainers. I don't know any of that. But what I'm saying is, if you are on your fat loss journey, your goal should be not to lose muscle tissue in your journey. We can maintain it. We see it day in and day out. And that's what we're going to kind of go over today inside of this position paper, why we teach certain things, where we want people's protein intake, and why it's so important to have an optimal protein intake in your wellness journey, whether it's fat loss or not.
Love it.
So just crazy, man. I saw it and I was just like, it's like the elephant in the room. I'm like, is no one no one going to say anything, you
Yeah,
know?
it's awesome. Like it's awesome looking at the scale. It's awesome, but getting down to that muscle loss, yeah,
Yeah. And what's going to happen? That person's probably not happy where they're at, I would say. So they're either going to try to continue losing, or you don't know, but unless that is addressed, once again, it's going to be very difficult for them to quote unquote pick that muscle tissue back up. All right.
yeah. A lot
So
of times I see it. That's the two things I see. They either try to keep going and they end up burning out because they're still not seeing that result that they want because they're not still not focused on the habit of maintaining the muscle, or they don't like what they see and then they go and gain the weight back because they're like, I don't like the way I look. I need to put on muscle tissue, and they start adding in more calories and go the other way. And like you talked about, like don't gain the muscle, but just gain body fat back.
I love our sophomore years, or sorry, it's technically sophomore, right? But our second year with people, right? So, let's take someone we lose 100 pounds, 60 pounds with them, we get them lean, and then they go into their, hey, Jeremy, thank you so much. I'm healthier. I love it. But, man, I want to gain some muscle tissue, right? It happens. And I love it when we start the second like phase of fat loss. So we've added calories back into individuals. They're focused on gaining muscle tissue, and then we start cutting calories again. We start working on fat loss again because and Gavin sent me a message the other day. He was like showing his upper abs. He's like, I didn't have these it was like 20 pounds heavier. He's like, I didn't have these at this point of the journey or the cut last time. I'm like, because it's different, right? So he's 20 pounds up on the scale from where he could see his abs versus the last quote unquote time that we were dropping weight. So I always
Yeah,
love that, sophomore, second, third season, whatever you want to call it, with individuals because, once again, that shows you too that even people who have success are still emotionally attached to that scale to a certain degree.
yep, yeah. I'm the same way. I can get up to 305 now. I'm 6'8" for reference, but I can get up to around 305 now and still see my abs a little bit. Where it used to be like 280 was where I would need to be to see abs.
100%. Like I'm walking around probably 12 because I've dropped a little bit of body fat this month, 12, 13% body fat, at 220. And I think about that from the standpoint of like 220 used to be like a high, chunky Jeremy weight. You know what I'm saying? Like
That was the hit the speed bump and then feel a little jiggle.
feel a little bump on the the belly would bounce. That was the old 220. So that's where I even for me I've had to get out of that and even for because in my mind and we talked about this I was trying to get to 200 for Leadville and I'm like I quit lifting and was just doing some body weight stuff and I'm like all right let's quit lifting big and heavy and now I'm like you know what Jeremy just get as strong and as fit as you can. Don't worry about your weight, right? And I know I'm going to have more power on the bike, at 220 than 200, but then so be it. Lucky for me, that is a strong suit. So I'm like, all right, let the weight be what it is. Just it is your hand. You're dealt it. Just get stronger. So, but hopefully we didn't lose you with the soapbox. But take home message: you should not be losing muscle tissue during a wellness journey. And also, I'm a fan of DEXA scans. Go have them done, right? So I'm not picking on the DEXA scan here. I'm not picking on the company here. I'm not picking on the fact that they posted this on social media with some good results. But it was just from my perspective, like losing 15 pounds of muscle should not happen. But in the average population of wellness and health, it's expected because that's what happens. And what we want to do is teach you how it not happen and to maintain that muscle tissue. So with that being said, would you like to start out, Monte, or do you want me?
So I'll read the first point.
Okay.
So getting into the ISSN position paper on protein, point one, there's 13 points. Point one is an acute exercise stimulus, particularly resistance exercise and protein ingestion, both stimulate muscle protein synthesis and are synergistic when protein consumption occurs before and after resistance exercise. Simple points, and you can dive a little bit more into it, is exercise plus protein is going to be most effective for building and maintaining muscle tissue. Lifting weights is going to help grow your muscles. Eating protein helps your muscles grow. Doing both together works the best.
So think about that. Like eating protein, eating food, a protein source has the same effect as lifting weights to a degree. right? So that's the reason like protein is awesome inside of your diet. And then the key word there, synergistic effect. So this is why we recommend a post-workout protein after you work out, because this is your highest stimulation of protein synthesis you can get. Okay, because at a certain point of eating protein, roughly 20 to 40 grams of protein, depending on what type of food is, you don't get more muscle protein synthesis. It kind of maxes out, right? So if you ate 70 grams of protein, it's not like that muscle protein synthesis keeps going up. Okay. But if you eat 40 grams of protein plus work out, that's the highest stimulation of muscle protein synthesis you can get for the day. So we recommend the protein shake after the workout. I know some in the bodybuilding world will do a protein shake before the workout. The key here is either do your protein shake before, after, and of course do resistance training, 100%. Number two, for building muscle mass and for maintaining muscle mass throughout positive muscle protein balance, and overall daily protein intake in the range of 1.4 to 2.0 grams of protein per kilogram a day is sufficient for most exercising individuals. That value falls in line with the acceptable macronutrient distribution range published by the Institute of Medicine for Protein. So we saw this little increase with the Food Guide Pyramid here recently, but this is going up to, once again, almost 2 grams per kilogram. And remember, if we're not too good on kilograms, 2.2 kilograms in a pound. So we're pushing that up to close to 1 gram of protein per target body weight, a little bit less, as where we want most people. Okay, now as we go through a few of these later on, you'll see why Monte and I recommend 1 gram of protein per target body weight based on these ranges. So AKA, more protein in the diet is good.
Yes. Number three, there is novel evidence that suggests higher protein intakes of 3.0 grams per kilogram a day may have positive effects on body composition in resistance trained individuals, aka promote loss of fat mass. And the simple points on this is just eating 3 grams per kilogram or more may help some people and or help people lose fat while maintaining muscle tissue, which is what we started the call about talking about.
100%. And this is the one that we leaned on because there is a uptake of need of protein when you're in a calorie reduced diet. There's also uptake need of protein when you are a little bit older, right? That's why I coach a lot of older people. I'm older. So that is where we've landed on us starting at 1 gram of protein per target body weight, because it puts us between this 2.0 grams per kilogram and this 3.0 grams per kilogram. Okay. Number four, recommendations regarding the optimal protein intake per serving for athletes to maximize muscle protein synthesis are mixed. And this is where I really think it's mixed because of what type of food and basically the individual, right? So it goes on to say, and are dependent upon age and resistant stimuli. So when did you exercise? Okay. General recommendation is about 0.25 grams of high quality protein per body weight. And I know that's like people like, well, Jeremy, I'm having to do math. No, 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 no. An absolute dose for most people, 20 to 40 grams of protein. So if you're doing an animal based protein, we recommend our individuals eat 20 to 40 grams of protein every time they eat. This is why we teach P squared, and the first P in P squared being eat a primary protein source with each meal or each snack between 20 and 40 grams. Pretty simple, right? So whatever protein source you like, that's a primary protein source, either your meat, fish, eggs, some dairy, cottage cheese, Greek yogurt, and protein shakes. Make sure you have 20 to 40 grams of it. And then, an easy way to meal prep, we've always talked about it, is depending on how much protein you have to have a day and how many times you like to eat a day, just divide that into your total. Then you know how much protein you need at each meal for you as an individual.
Nice. You hit on it because I was going to go into like smaller individuals that would be closer to like to the lower one, could be higher,
Yep.
and then the larger individuals, or just take that daily protein target and then use that for how much you're going to eat at each meal.
Yeah, it kind of takes care of itself, right? Like, why is there a range there? Because some people are smaller, right? Hey, I'm 5'8", you're 6'8". A little bit of a difference there, right? So that is why you have a difference. Now, a lot of times we will just say 30 to 40 grams for our people just to make it easier, versus the 20. But once again, if it's 20 grams of, for example, 20 grams of protein from eggs, 20 grams of protein from chicken, 20 grams of protein from whey protein, a scoop of whey protein, that will maximize your muscle protein synthesis because that's a high quality protein.
All right, number 5, acute protein doses should strive to contain 700 to 3,000 milligrams of leucine and or a higher relative leucine content, in addition to a balanced array of the essential amino acids, which is just looking for 700 to 3,000 milligrams of leucine. Leucine is the amino acid that just kind of switches on that muscle building, the muscle protein synthesis. So,
And I feel like number five is um, a step of number four, basically, right?
yeah.
So, because if once again, if you're doing animal based protein and you eat 20 to 40 grams, you're getting 700 to 3,000 milligrams of leucine. If you're more plant based, this is where you'd want to kind of diagnose your food intake, see how much of the essential amino acids you are getting in there, and look at the leucine content and see if you do need to supplement with branched chain amino acids or essential amino acids. But if you're eating protein based or animal based protein sources, don't have to stress about it. 20 to 40 grams of protein, you're solid.
It's
Number
just
six.
validation on there. They put it in there twice. That means it's important. So let's do
Yeah, exactly. Like, hey,
it.
number six, protein doses should ideally, doing quotations if you're not looking at me, be evenly distributed through every 3 to 4 hours a day. Okay. And the reason being, you want to stimulate muscle protein synthesis as much as possible when the goal is to gain muscle tissue and to recover as an athlete. Okay. We don't have our lifestyle people eat every 3 to 4 hours. Okay. If you hit your goal for the day, you'll maintain your muscle tissue. With this one being said, if your goal is to gain muscle tissue, yes, I would eat every 3 to 4 hours. I would just split your protein intake up evenly throughout the day when the goal is to gain muscle tissue.
Yeah, another one I do that with is people who experience hunger throughout the day, just have them split it up more evenly because it helps with that.
100%. Great point.
Number 7, the optimal time period during which to ingest protein is likely a matter of individual tolerance since benefits are derived from pre or post workout ingestion. However, the anabolic effect of exercise is long lasting, at least 24 hours, but likely diminishes with increasing time post exercise. So, timing matters, but not that much. So protein before or after your workout or both, like we talked about earlier. And then the muscle building window lasts about 24 hours. So your body's a wonderful machine. It's going to recover regardless. It's going to find a way to recover. Obviously, the quicker we can like speed up the recovery, the better, but it's going to recover.
And that's where we've heard of that window of opportunity. At first thought, we thought the sensitivity on those receptor sites on our muscle cells was only open for like an hour.
Golden
Because
window.
yeah, think of it as this: it's like right after exercise, that's when the sensitivity is the highest, and then over 24 hours, it's going to return back to baseline. That's a great way to think about it. So number eight, while it is possible for physically active individuals to obtain their daily protein requirements through the consumption of whole foods, supplementation is practically a way to ensure intake of adequate protein, to ensure that you will hit your daily protein. All right. While maintaining the calories that you need, particularly for athletes and that are doing high volume of training, because usually a lot of the high volume of food there. But I would also argue in our fat loss clients that we're cutting calories, right? Because when you cut calories, we got to watch the carb and fat intake. Well, a protein shake is just a protein. So it's a great way, versus if I eat beef, even if I get a lean beef, I'm still going to get some fat from it. So doing the protein shakes help us keep our protein up while keeping the carb fats down so that we can get into the caloric deficit to drop that body fat.
Yeah, it's one of those things. At the end of the day, I have clients who message me all the time, and just like, hey, like I'm at like close to my calories for the day, but I'm short on protein. What do I do? And I'm like, have a protein shake.
Yeah, drink a shake.
All right, number 9, rapidly digested proteins that contain high proportions of essential amino acids, EAAs, and adequate leucine are most effective for stimulating muscle protein synthesis. So, fast digesting protein like a whey protein is going to be best for hitting the muscles quickly and helping you to recover.
Yeah, we'll tie that one in back up to number five again, right?
Yeah.
Because higher leucine intake is needed and wanted. But once again, within our and um, animal based proteins are good. And this is why I always tell the athletes like, if we're doing 2 scoops of whey protein post workout, you don't need branched amino acids because in every scoop of whey protein, there's 5 naturally occurring branched chain amino acids in each scoop, right? So that's just something to be aware of from that aspect. Okay. Number 10, different types of quality of protein can affect amino acid bioavailability following protein supplementation. So kind of what we've been hitting on, not that we don't count our protein from our plant-based sources, but our plant-based sources are not going to have all the essential amino acids, or are not, all that protein might not be available for digestion. Even inside animal products, there's some that are better as far as digestion goes, and we're going to absorb it, from that standpoint.
All right, number 11, athletes should consider focusing on whole food sources of protein that contain all the essential amino acids. It is the essential amino acids that are required to stimulate muscle protein synthesis. So just focusing on complete protein sources, like we've talked about a couple of these points now. Choose proteins that have all the essential amino acids. These are the ones that are going to actually help you to build muscle tissue.
Yep. Hey, and if you are plant-based, totally fine. Depending on what combinations of plant-based proteins you're doing, we would maybe look at adding an EAA supplement to your meals, right? That's how we would do it, to make sure that we're stimulating the muscle protein synthesis so you maintain your muscle tissue, gain muscle tissue. Not hard to do. Like a lot of my plant-based clients that are endurance athletes, because the calories are so high, we have no problem hitting protein and maintaining muscle tissue. It is in the fat loss client that is 100% plant-based that it's difficult to hit protein needs. So we have to be very careful how we balance it. And then 99% of the time, I am adding the essential amino acids to my plant-based clients. What number are we on? 12?
Well,
Yep. So speaking of endurance athletes should focus on achieving adequate carbohydrate intake to promote optimal performance. The addition of protein may help to offset muscle damage and promote recovery. So if you're an endurance athlete, yes, carbohydrate is still important, but protein has to be hit to maintain muscle tissue. So you add your carbohydrate in based on the volume of training that you're doing, and then your protein intake stays the same. So if I'm working at, if I am working at with an endurance athlete that's a fat loss client, so they're wanting to drop body fat, but they still are training at high volume, I set their baseline calories. So protein, a carb load, and a fat load is set. And then I let them fuel on top of that during their training with additional carbohydrate. So that's how I usually set up that for my athletes.
awesome. And last point, number 13, pre-sleep casein protein or any slow digesting protein provides increase in overnight muscle protein synthesis and metabolic rate without influencing lipolysis, which is simply saying, getting 30 to 40 grams of slow digesting protein before bed will help you recover while you sleep. And it will not help with overnight muscle building, but also not affect fat loss.
Big fancy word there, lipolysis.
Yes.
Lipofat, lysis, the breakdown. Yeah, so what that one is like, hey, if you want to really make sure that you're gaining muscle tissue or maintaining muscle tissue, look at doing a protein shake before bed. And that's a great way, my opinion, a great way to, especially if you're pushing hard. From that standpoint, I usually don't have people do it unless volume is really high or we're really pushing hard to drop body fat for an event, for a challenge, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, I love it too. I noticed personally, and I've had clients do it as well who do that, and then they wake up not actually feeling as hungry in the morning.
Hungry. Yeah.
So that that helps them a lot with their hunger the next day.
Yeah, and we use level one for that, because level one is a mixture of, a slower digestion protein and a quicker digestion protein. You could use like a whey isolate in that situation, but you do really want the proteins going to digest a little bit slower, so those amino acids will trickle out, throughout the night. So take home message, guys: to maintain your muscle tissue, gain muscle tissue, you need a resistance train and need to eat at least 1 gram of protein per target body weight. Okay. If you're really pushing fat loss, for the benefits of extra caloric expenditure, extra hunger control, extra volume inside the diet, most of the time me and Monte are increasing protein above 1 gram of protein per target body weight. Give you an example, and this is just for average client. We're taking our females right now up to around 200 grams, and we're taking our males up to around 300 grams. But this is inside of a plan that we've already been working with them for 4, 6, 8 weeks. They've already been losing. We're just increasing the protein to promote even better fat loss. So with that being said, we won 3 times last year inside of the First Form Challenge. So if you're new to this, first time hearing the podcast, you want a wellness coach, reach out to us. either one of us would be more than welcome to have you on our team. And once again, we're shooting for 4 to 6 winners, I think is what we said this year, right?
I think that was the number. I like six. Just
I know it's getting harder and harder, but I like it. Let's go for 6.
I mean, we got two of us we got double the opportunity each time.
I like it. Double the opportunity each time. And at the end of the day, you know, as long as we're putting people in the finals, because I would argue that we should have had 5 winners at a minimum last year. I think me and you both had a guy that we thought were top, but
Yeah, putting people in the finals and getting them there, that means that this person went out, they got results, they changed their life in some way, shape, or
yeah,
form. So
100%.
whether they won or not, they still won inside of their wellness journey.
Listen, my number one goal is to change your life, in wellness and help you, because then you go tell your family and your friends, you bring me more clients. And that's my business model, right? First one's happy with me, they're happy with you, Monte. As we bring in more people and we continue changing lives, like we're able to put food on our table and live great lives, right? That's the quote business model here, guys and gals. But the competitor in me and the competitor in Monte is like, we like to win. So for these challenges, if people want to jump on, they want to go hard, we're down for that. And the first quarter challenge, you have until February 4th to get your photos in to join this first quarter challenge. But if you're hearing this after February 4th, no worries. You will just then be in our second quarter challenge.
And that's why we say people first.
Winning matters.
Winning matters.
Appreciate you, brother. I hope you have a great rest of your day and week, and I'll see you back on here next week.
All right, talk to you soon. Thank you, everybody.